Well, yes, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's women's football chat. We'll just give it a minute or so, let more people come in to the chat room. But yeah, if you are here this evening, then let us know in the chat, and we should get a great discussion going about the FAWNL. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to make sure everything's working as it should, and we can then start to crack on with predominantly FA Cup results from the past 7 days, and we've had some great questions in as well from viewers to discuss on this week's show. We'll just give people a bit of time to come in, and I can check there's no dropped frames and all the rest of it. So it looks as though we should be all right at the moment. So right, okay then, yes, welcome along to this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every Thursday, usually at 6 p.m, but started going live and pushing it back to 8 p.m. just to make it a bit friendlier for people. And this is the show that's dedicated to the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. We go through the news, the results, the tables, the upcoming fixtures, which change quite a bit, and we will crack on. Good evening to Nick, who says hashtag up for the cup, hashtag top of the league, hashtag Wolves AY. So yeah, Wolves living it up at the top of the Northern Premier Division table at the moment. We've got plenty of questions to go through, so what I think we'll do is we'll crack straight on with the results, the tables, and then we can have a look at some of the questions before we look at next week's fixtures coming up. So yes, if you do have any questions throughout the course of the show, do drop them into the chat on YouTube. I've also got my Twitter open for DMs and DMs and notifications if you want to do it on Twitter instead. But let's start with the league fixture that happened in the past 7 days. One in Southwest, very interesting, lots to talk about. It's Maidenhead United 0, Abingdon United 0, and what that has meant for the Southwest table is absolutely nothing at all, really. We've got Maidenhead United are still in 7th. They're now just on 10 points, not 9. Abingdon United still in the bottom 2, but only they're now on goal difference. So that's the Southwest table. We have one game going on in Southwest at the moment. It's Bournemouth Sports against AFC Bournemouth. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the course of the evening. 0-0 at the moment with 17 minutes gone. So let's have a look at the FA Cup then. There were 44 ties involving FA Women's National League sides in the FA Cup first round. And we'll go through them. It will take me a little bit of time to find each one on the full-time list, so just bear with me. And of course, with so much data on the screen, you lucky people get to have some time without having to look at my face. So Cheadle Town Stingers beating FC Fire by 2-0, 2 for Imogen Portis Williams there. And then FC St Helens beating Doncaster Rovers Bells by 2-1. Doncaster Rovers already out then of the Women's FA Cup. Doncaster Rovers. There's a problem is that you've then got to try and find them in all of this. There they are. Their Doncaster's only goal coming to Lucy Farrow in the 73rd minute. No such problems for Hull City beating Washington by 7-0. A hat-trick for Ellie Tanser, 2 for Rachel Ackroyd, 1 each for Shakala Brooks and Helen Linsky. But York City losing to Handsworth by 2-0. Burnley comfortably getting past Spennymoor Town by 12-0. Burnley scoring at will in the FA Cup at the moment. So 12-0 a win over Spennymoor, but that info's not on full time yet. Thornaby only losing to Liverpool Feds by 7-2. Thornaby, giving them a bit of a game for a while. Goals to Liverpool Feds, 2 for Bethany Donoghue, and then 1 each for Alicia Collins, Emma Johnson, Evie Smith, Emily Cole, and Holly Deering. Durham Sestra beating Norton and Stockton Ancients by 4-0. Comfortable win for Durham in that one. As I said, they win 4-0. Daisy Clark in the 3rd minute, Nikki Gears in the 20th, Erin Nicholson 23rd and 38th with their goals. Huddersfield Town comfortable over Nantwich Town by 7-0. Goals in this one for Huddersfield: Molly Firth in the 14th, Autumn Housley 2 for her, 56 and 57, 2 for Charlotte Stewart, 23 and 86, Ashley Tirapic in the 59th, and Kate Mallin in the 89th minute. Middlesbrough beating Wythenshawe by 3-0 away from home. Lauren Robson and 2 for Ellen Turnbull. Another shock here though, Mancunian Unity. You'll remember Mancunian, they knocked out Leeds United in the 1st round of the FA Cup, and then they go and beat Stockport County as well by 6-2, and they were 5-0 up at half time in this game, were Mancunian Unity. Jessica Brady and Kennedy Owen with the goals for Stockport County in the second half. Yeah, Mancunian Unity, great FA Cup campaign they are having. South Shields, they beat Halifax. Tier 3 Halifax knocked out by South Shields on penalties. 3-3 at the end of extra time. Halifax's goals coming to Megan Cardenas in the 34th minute, and then 1 to Danielle Whittam in the 78th and Chloe Fisher in the 81st. But South Shields winning on penalties. Worcester City as well, only just getting past Stamford by 3-2. Goals in this one for Worcester City. As I said, a very close game for them. Actually, they haven't got their goals on the system. That's useful. Loughborough Lightning winning 2-1 over Sutton Coldfield Town. That was an All Division 1 Midlands tie. A goal for Jade Arbour 5 minutes from time put Loughborough through after Neve Deasy had put Sutton Coldfield in front before 2 minutes later Poppy Wright equalised for Loughborough. Notts County 0, Sporting Cowser 5. So relatively comfortable this one for the Tier 3 side. Winning, as I said, 5-0 away at Notts County. No information on that game yet, though. Boldmere St Michael's 1, Nottingham Forest 3. Goals then, Latia Bojang with the only goal for Boldmere. Forest, Mel Johnson 2 for her, 20th and 65th minute. Charlie Wellings in the 40th. Asford Beamators 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 7. Relatively comfortable game, this one for Wolves, winning, as I said, by 7-1. A hat-trick for Tammy George, 1 for Abby Lloyd and 1 for Beth Merrick and 2 for Rachel Quigley. Shrewsbury Town against Northampton Town, 3-2. This one for Shrewsbury Town. Again, another one, a Tier 4 side in the FAWNL knocked out by a Tier 5 or below side. No information on that one. And then Knoll losing to West Brom by 7-1 means that West Brom with their 7 goals. Simran Jamat, 2 for Miriam Mahmood, 2 for Rhiannon Oakley, 1 for Phoebe Warner and 1 for Ellie May, puts West Brom safely in the hat for round 2. Second page then, AFC Telford 1, Stourbridge 5. Telford then their run ends at the hands of Stourbridge, who are through into the second round. Stourbridge, no information on there yet. Stoke City 5 coming up against Hednesford Town. Stoke City. The problem is when you do the FA Cup is everything's on 2 pages, so it takes me longer to get there. 2 for Evie Priestley, 2 for Millie Ravening and 1 for Shannon Stamps. Leafhead Athletic of Tier 4 knocking out 3rd tier Derby County by 3-1. I said last week that would be a really interesting game to see how a side towards the top of Tier 4 fares against a side towards the lower half of Tier 3. And Leeford Athletic met the challenge. Evangeline Gallop in the 6th minute, Jessica Lowe 62nd, Tiara Jade 83rd, Camille Jenkins in the 15th with the only goal for Derby. Rugby Borough beating Lincoln City by 7-0. 4 for Angelina Nixon, 1 each for May Moncaster, Yasmin Mosby and Nikki Potts. Peterborough United of Tier 4 penalties, but they get past Billericay Town of Tier 3. So another higher tier side knocked out by one below. 4-2 on penalties for Peterborough United in that game, as full time's now decided it wants to break on me, which is very helpful. London Seaward 3, Hackney 1, relatively comfortable result there. Yeah, full time's completely broken on me. Just bear with me for a moment. Nick, called Leafield beating Derby and Posh beating Billericay. You did, that is very true. Full time has, I've used full time too much and now it's crashed on me. Isn't that useful? I'll see if I can get it back up on my phone and do this kind of on the hop here for you. But yeah, London Seaward 3, Hackney 1, AFC Sudbury 3, Bowers and Pitsea 0, Hashtag United 6, Wroxham 0. Ipswich Town, after beating Milton Keynes Dons by 13-0 in the league last week, they then went and beat them 12-0 in the FA Cup. So a 25-0 aggregate score over those two games. Norwich City beating Cambridge United by 1-0 in the all Tier 4 affair. Queen's Park Rangers beating Penn and Tyler's Green as well by 3-0 at Oxford United ahead of Actonians 5-0. Worthing beating Comets 5-2. Watford needing penalties to beat Wimbledon. Wimbledon, of course, won in the league in the week. Watford getting their revenge in the FA Cup. Lewis needing penalties to get past Dulwich Hamlet after they finished 1-1. Fulham beat Chesham 7-0, despite the FA and full time both saying 6-0. The clubs both say it was 7. Chatham Town 5, Dorking Wanderers 2, and Farnham Town 0, London Bees 2. And finally, Torquay United 0, Bridgewater United 1, Cheltenham Town 7, Yeovil Town 0, Bristol Rovers just getting past Sherborne Town by 4-3, Plymouth Argyle 6, Poole Town 0, Saltash United 0, AFC Bournemouth 6, Moneyfields beating Bournemouth Sports 1-0, Gwalior beating Swindon Town by 4-1, and Exeter City beating Keynsham Town by 4-0. So have a look through there. I don't think there's any shocks on that final page, but then in the elsewhere, then on the second page, so you've got Fulham beating Chesham United, there's 1. You've then got you've got Peterborough United beating Billericay Town, there's 2. Leafield beating Derby is 3. And then on the first page of those results, you've got South Shield beating Halifax is 4, Mancunian Unity beating Stockport is 5, Handsworth beating York City is 6, FC St Helens beating Doncaster Rovers Bells is 7. So plenty of shocks in the FA Cup. We've now got 28 ties coming up in a couple of weeks' time. 29 ties coming up in a couple of weeks' time to get the teams down to 29 before the championship sides come in. So those are the results, since full time decided didn't want to play games with me. So we'll go now, before we go to the fixtures coming up in the next 7 days. We'll have a look at some of the questions that you've been sending in. You can do that on socials, on Twitter. At W Football Chat is the place to put your questions. So we've got 5 really. Well, it's 4 and a bit of a rant to go through this week. So we'll start we'll start with the FA Cup questions, shall we? Which is here from Nick, who I know is in the chat, and he says, when will the FA respect the lower league teams with the FA prize money? And this is obviously coming off the back of earlier on this season, the prize fund was announced. It didn't change from the season before. and there is that big jump in prize money from when the championship teams come in. So have a look at the funds. So if we start from where the FAWNL sides come in, because that's where this show is about. So third round qualifying, winning club 4,000, losing club 1,000. First round proper, which was these ones we've just been through, 6,000 for the winner, 1,500 for the loser. And then the second round proper, 8,000 for the winner, 2,000 for the loser. So they're going up in relatively equal increments, couple of thousand for the winner, an extra 500 quid for the loser. Then we get to the third round proper where the championship teams come in, and it jumps from going 468 to 35 for the winning club and £9,000 for the losing club. So the championship sides get £9,000 just for playing one game. Then the fourth round proper, when the Super League sides come in, £13,000 for the losing club, £54,000 for the winning club. So the Super League sides get £13,000 just for being a Super League club, essentially, and being in the FA Cup. Then the fifth round, it's 80,000 and 20,000, quarter-final 90,000 and 22,500, semi-final 160,000 and 40,000, and then the final 430,000 and 108,000. So when will the FA respect the lower league teams with the FA Cup prize money? Who knows? Is the simple answer to that question. Haven't got the foggiest. Some of these teams that have gone through first, second, third round qualifying, they might have several thousand, yes, but how much were the coaches to go there and all the rest of it? So yeah, it needs balancing out a little bit. It's great that the prize money has gone up. Last year kind of let them off a bit because Adobe came on board kind of in between the second and third rounds. So I thought, okay, well, that's why there's suddenly an influx of money and then it'll balance out next season. It hasn't balanced out. So there is still that jump when championship sides come in, and it needs to not be there as much, particularly because it's the lower sides that really need the money. Because we are seeing them struggle left, right, and centre. And my big problem with it was the reasoning given, which was that it will give clubs an incentive in the competition. It's the FA Cup, the finals at Wembley. What more of an incentive do you need than being able to play a game at Wembley and possibly win the FA Cup? I don't think you really need much more of an incentive than that to take part and do well in a competition. It's really, it's one where you look at it and you go, really, why do you need an incentive? Why do clubs need an incentive to be in the FA Cup? It just seems a bit mad to me that they need that, but that's what the clubs say they need. That's what the clubs say they need. So we'll go for this. We'll go to the rant more than anything else, which has come from Steve, who put this rant on at WFootball Chat for me. This weekend sees Bristol Rovers play at their fourth different ground in their last 4 home games, one of which was behind closed doors, which was the FA Cup result. How are they supposed to build a following when no one knows where to find them or even if they can attend? Yeah, it's a fair point. The behind closed doors one, particularly in the FA Cup, was slightly bizarre. I assume it was due to ground grading. The ground grading is much stricter this year. I know when I spoke to Bournemouth Sports in the summer, one of the summer episodes you can go back and watch, they said they had to do a lot of work to get it ready for the FAWNL. So I guess that with pitch availability and having to move all the time is Bristol Rovers' thing. I think it's clear that obviously not everyone is blessed with a permanent home. That's something. Even Arsenal are getting kicked out of the Emirates because of that League Cup quarter-final tie when the women are playing Bayern Munich. So it's difficult. It's annoying. I think it's just as annoying for the team because the team want a permanent home where they have the same layout. They know the routine. They know where everything is week after week and that they can build a fan base around. So they'll be just as annoyed. And I'm sure it's something that the club are looking at. But 4 different venues for 4 different home games is extreme. It really is. It's mad that that's what they're having to go through at the moment, is changing all of the time from week to week and not knowing what the situation is. Um, right, let's go to the one kind of more general one, which is from Nolly, who says, what resources do national and county associations give to support amateur teams performing due diligence on prospective employees and volunteers, etc.? Short answer, I have absolutely no idea. But I assume it will be the standard DBS check, CRB check, etc., that the volunteers will have to go through, whatever it's called now. But I imagine that the extent of A, resources, B, what counties require, etc., will obviously vary from county FA to county FA, just like the county cups vary so much from team to team, from county to county. But I think for kind of general bits and pieces, then teams are kind of so grateful really to have the help, because they need it so much all the time, that there'll be the basic stuff, but probably not anything in a huge amount of detail really, because as I said, they're just so desperate for the help. John has then come through. Which teams could get promoted and not be favourites to go back down again? Who has gone down and could free fall even further? Now, so we'll look at going up first. Tier 3. Tier 3 is hard because if you look at this year's Women's Championship, Newcastle currently 4th, doing well, 7 games played, 14 points. Portsmouth, bottom, no points, 7 played, 7 losses, 1 goal for, 23 goals against. So 2 sides that both went up last year, having very different times of it in the Championship. My view at the moment is that I think Northern teams would give it a good go. I think if you look at any of the Wolves, Rugby, Burnley, they'd give it a good go, maybe 9th, 10th, first season, something like that, get in a bit of a relegation battle, maybe end up on the right side of it. If it was Forest that were to go up, I think maybe like a 7th or an 8th perhaps, purely because I think Evangelos Marinakis, the Forest owner, if the women were to get up into the Championship this season, would start to pour money into that because he wants the Super League. That's where he wants to be. He's thinking in 2 years' time, and I think he will just pour money in to try and get it there. The South, I think, is more difficult because the South seems to be full of teams. Now you've got your hashtag drips, which is your Oxfords, but they're so more evenly balanced that I think and based on how Portsmouth are doing as well, it could just prove difficult for them. I think Forest being a Midlands team as well, lower travel, all that sort of thing, it's a minor thing, but it all plays a part. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. In Tier 4 going into Tier 3, Bournemouth or Swindon, absolutely fine. They won't have a problem. Bedford have proven they can beat Tier 3 sides. South East is so tight though, who knows who's going to go up in South East. I think that the bottom half of the Southern Premier Division is a bit weaker than the bottom half of the Northern Premier Division. So because of that, I think if you get up in the Southern Premier Division, you've got a bit more of a chance of staying there. But then you say, we know how that can change season on season. You look at the North, you go, well, Loughborough are used to Tier 3, Middlesbrough are used to Tier 3. They're both sides that have a real possibility of going up this season, are used to the Northern Premier Division, may well be able to stay in the Northern Premier Division, because I think there are teams in the Northern Premier Division that are struggling. I mean, your Stourbridge and your Hull are the two that are just outside the relegation spots at the moment. So it's, yeah, obviously you never really know. Nick says Halifax have a similar level of home grounds over the last 12 months. That's very true. They have been moving no end, and you remember the back end of last year, they had to play in this like neutral ground because they didn't have any free Sundays, and it was too far for teams to travel in midweek. Um, and then in terms of teams free falling, I think Halifax are in real danger of doing that. Fylde, they're only a point above the relegation zone, and they only came down last year. And Lincoln City, no points from 9 games, but they were, quite close to promotion not too long ago. So I think they're in that same situation. Abingdon were in fifth last year. They're struggling this year. Southampton women's, after struggling last year, are struggling again this year. If they drop out of the FAWNL, what does it mean for those sides? Very difficult to know, really. And then we'll round off with the questions. As I said, if you've got any more, shove them in the live chat. If you've got any more, and we can get to those kind of off the top of my head. But these are ones I've kind of prepared for. So then a final one from Nick. Which teams in each league are over and underperforming? So it's quite a lot to this one, with there being 6 leagues. Northern Premier Division, Derby are lower than I expected them to be. Feds are a bit higher than I expected them to be. And I didn't expect Halifax to be struggling quite as much as they are. In the Southern Premier Division, I thought Gwalior would do a bit better than they have been doing given their new investment. MK Dons is a mess. Lewis and Watford I both thought would be a bit higher in the table. But it is great to see both the promoted sides in the top half. So from a pyramid point of view, to have teams come up and not just be rock bottom of the tier above is great. Division 1 Midlands, didn't expect Leafield to be having the great season that they're having, and didn't expect Lincoln City to be doing what they're doing. So those teams closer to those clubs may have thought, yes, that this is something that is right, but from a neutral point of view looking in, it was like, oh, okay, and that's changed significantly. Same with Division 1 North. I mean, this was a bit of bias from me because having spoken to the Cheadle boss in the summer, he said, oh, we'll try and survive, is basically what he said, and they're flying. I do think come the end of the season, they'll fall just short of promotion, and I think that's a good thing, because if you get promoted too quickly, you've got to make so many changes too quickly, and the talent and the rate of opposition you're playing suddenly gets so great that you almost can't keep up with it and handle it. Fylde seems to be in free fall, as I've mentioned. Doncaster have struggled in Division 1 North ever since they've moved from the Midlands up to the north. I did think they'd be higher though. In South East, again, great to see the promoted sides in the top half. I did think they'd do well, but to have them in the top half and contesting, I mean, Real Bedford have got a game in hand. If they win the game in hand, they go top. Ashford surprised me. 4th last year, now at the bottom. And then in Division 1 South West, Bristol Rovers have done well to have the start they have, particularly moving grounds all the time. Worthing are low, but they do have games in hand, so they can jump that up quite a bit. Abingdon were 5th last year, so they're down towards the bottom, a bit lower than I was expecting. And I don't like Southampton women's being there, but they struggled last season as well. We know how difficult they found the start of this season, so I think that having them down towards the bottom might not be too much of a surprise. I just hope it doesn't turn into a Chelsea situation. They were able to get that point, but of course they have had it deducted from that game where they had the storm and didn't come back out again. So yeah, there's plenty to unpack. We are of course only, well, not even halfway through the season. We've got so much football, so many games left to play. So, a lot can change between now and then. I'm keeping track of all of the stats. So you'll remember from last year at Christmas and at the end of the season, I did those big stats documents. That's happening again. We can see where teams rank, not just within their own league, but in the whole of the FAWNL. So let's crack on then with looking ahead to a full programme of fixtures coming up in the FAWNL over the next 7 days. As I said, we have that one game tonight, Bournemouth Sports against AFC Bournemouth. At the moment, it is still 0-0. Nobody has there's no indication that there's been any goals there. We're there on the 44th minute mark. So do, when we get into Southwest, take the table with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Right, northern fixtures then. Derby County against Stourbridge, Liverpool Feds against Wolverhampton Wanderers, Rugby Borough take on Hull City, Sporting Cowser against Burnley, Halifax against Stoke City, and West Bromwich Albion against Nottingham Forest. So Wolves can stay 2 points clear at the top, at least with a win. Of course, Forest still have that game in hand. That game in hand is next week, the 17th, when Wolves are in County Cup action. Forest are playing Stoke. So there is that game in hand for Forest. So Derby Stourbridge down towards the bottom, 8th against 10th. Liverpool Feds against Wolverhampton Wanderers, 6th against 1st. Rugby Borough against Hull City, 3rd against 9th. Sporting Cowser take on Burnley, 11th against 4th. Halifax against Stoke, 12th against 5th. And West Brom against Forest, that one is 7th against 2nd. So we've already seen in the Northern Premier Division this split of the top 6 and then the 6-point gap to the bottom 6. So in terms of teams playing each other, I mean, you've got Wolves against Feds, which is 1st against 6th, as I said there. But all the other teams in the top half are playing teams in the bottom half. So that gap, you would think, is only going to increase with this weekend, if, of course, the form guides are anything to go by. Southern Premier Division then, Billericay Town against AFC Wimbledon, Cheltenham Town take on Ipswich Town, Milton Keynes Dons against Lewes, Plymouth Argyle against Gwalior United, Watford take on Exeter City, and # United against Oxford United. That's the big one right there, that last one on the list. 1st against 2nd, they can't both win, so Ipswich, who are away at Cheltenham, who are down in 9th, will be looking at that and licking their lips because they've got 2 games in hand on those teams, and with either one team dropping points and the other winning, or them both dropping points with a draw, Ipswich will certainly be looking to capitalise on that. They're only 3 points off the top. They've got 2 games in hand. Exeter against Watford, 4th against 6th, is going to be a tough one for both of those sides as well. They may fall away even further from the top of the table battle. So earlier on in the season, it could have been any one of 4 or 5 sides. You're starting to just get away from that a little bit. Yes, Exeter have got a game in hand to get to 20. Ipswich could get to 26 with theirs, but there's plenty there. The gaps are starting to eke out ever so slightly. Towards the bottom, Plymouth against Gwalior, that's the big one. There's a 5-point gap at the moment. Gwalior could make it an 8-point gap for themselves if they are to win that game against Plymouth. Moving through then into Tier 4, Lincoln United against Boldmere St Michael's, Loughborough Lightning against Sutton Coldfield Town, Northampton Town against Solihull Moors, Notts County take on Lincoln City, Worcester City against Barnsley Women's, and Leafield Athletic against Peterborough United. Much like the South, it's that final game there on the list. Leafield Athletic, Peterborough United, the top 2. Just 1 point separates them, and that is sure to be a great game. And at Leafield, maybe you just fancy them. Maybe you fancy Leafield to be top by the end of the weekend. Elsewhere, I mean, it's going to be relatively difficult for teams, you would think, towards the bottom to pick up some points. Lincoln City away at Notts County. Worcester City, it's home to Barnsley Women's. Barnsley Women's are in 7th. They could get something from that game. Solihull Moors down in 10th for playing 3rd place Northampton. So again, it's going to be difficult for those teams down towards the bottom to get something from this weekend, you feel. Into the north, Barnsley against Norton Stockton Ancients, Cheadletown Stingers against Huddersfield Town, Chorley against Leeds United, Doncaster Rovers Bells take on Middlesbrough, Durham-Cester against AFC Fylde, and I've not changed that badge. I apologise for that. Cheadletown Stingers and AFC Fylde badges are the wrong way around. Doncaster Rovers Bells against Middlesbrough and York City against Stockport County. So again, Cheadletown against Huddersfield is 3rd against 5th. York against Stockport, that's like 12th against, what's that, 8th, 7th. Doncaster Rovers Bells against Middlesbrough, it's going to be difficult for them. Barnsley against Norton Stockton Ancients might be the best opportunity to pick up some points down towards the bottom. AFC Fylde against Durham as well, so one of those sides will pull away from the relegation zone come the end of the weekend. Division 1 South East, Ashford Town against London Bees, Cambridge United against Queen's Park Rangers, Cheshire United take on Chatham Town, Dulwich Hamlet against AFC Sudbury, London Seawood against Rail Bedford, and Norwich City against Actonians. What is it about these games towards the top this weekend? Norwich City against Actonians, the top two coming up against each other. Down towards the bottom, Ashford Town, they're taking on a mid-table side. Cheshire United taking on Chatham, who are 4th. London Seawood taking on Rail Bedford, who are 3rd. So again, it's going to be another difficult one. Cambridge United against Queen's Park Rangers, opportunity for them both to break away again. But as we keep saying, in the Division 1 South East, it is a mini league between the bottom 3, Chesham, London Seawood and Ashford Town. 2 of those 3 will be the ones that go down. Who it's going to be, we don't yet know, of course, but it's going to be 2 of those 3 sides. You would say they're just too far adrift of everybody else. And in Division 1 South West, as I said, there is that one game going on now between AFC Bournemouth and Bournemouth Sports. It is 1-0 now to Bournemouth. Ball comes in to the box. Norman gets the header away wrong, swings to the back post for a free header for AFC Bournemouth to nod into the net from close range. 1-0 then to AFC Bournemouth in that Bournemouth derby. Maidenhead United against Keynsham, Abingdon United against Southampton Women's, AFC Bournemouth against Swindon Town, again 2 at the top. Bridgewater United against Bournemouth Sports, Bristol Rovers against Worthing, and Moneyfields against Portishead Town. So big game at the bottom 2 coming up against one another. Bournemouth Sports in 10th, or they could be 11th by the end of the night, of course, if Bournemouth go on a rampage second half. Against Bridgewater United, who are in 8th, so that's another big game towards the bottom. Bournemouth and Swindon, the top 2. So really, it's the it's the league to watch really this weekend, with important games down towards the bottom, important game up at the top. It's really going to be, as I said, the league to watch this weekend is Division 1 South West. But you know, we say it a lot that there's important games coming up in the FAWNL, and that's because there are so few of them in the league that every game kind of becomes important. But with top of the table clashes left, right and centre, games towards the bottom left, right and centre, particularly in this run between now and Christmas, and you can see on the board, you know, how many gaps there are in the board because of cup fixtures, games to be put in where they weren't scheduled because they could have been in the cup. Now we know they're not in the cup, so they've pulled a league game in there. It's this Christmas period when then you're going to be playing a team and then it gets called off with waterlogged pitch, frozen pitch, all the rest of it for you the next 3 months. This is where you've had your start, you're in this position, you've got to then kick on, try and distance yourself from the bottom 2, win these really important games. You know, Bournemouth have got to try and close the gap. If they were able to win that game against Swindon, that gap shrinks to 4 points and Bournemouth still have 3 in hand. Puts them really in the driving seat in South West. But but likewise towards the bottom. I mean, if Southampton women's win that game against Abingdon, then all of a sudden they're only, even with the deduction, they're only 2 points away from safety. If Abingdon win it, they're 3 points above the drop. So these games make a huge difference to these sides. And there really is everything to play for at the moment, both survival and trying to get up towards the top of the table. So in terms of fixtures and results and tables, we've been through the lot. So we'll have a couple more minutes, just if you've got any questions or anything like that you want to get in just before we finish. Just having a quick read of more Bournemouth sports stuff. At half time, they're now 1-0. You've got to love some of the admins in this. We have a free kick on the halfway line. AFC Bournemouth kicking the ball away, but the ref doesn't fancy implementing that rule. Half time here, 1-0. So yeah, let's say a couple of minutes, get some questions in if you have any, and if not, we'll wrap up for this week. But yeah, while we wait for those questions to get in, next week it will go back, this show, to being a recorded one for next week, purely because I've got a late shift at work, and there's no way I can get home, sort everything out at home, and then be on time to do this. So we'll go back to recorded just for next week, and then from then on we'll figure something out from there. But yeah, that will then just about do it, I think, for this week's women's football chat. Just check I've got nothing coming in on my socials before I completely wrap up. Nothing on there, and nothing on there. So that will then about do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. As I said, be back next Thursday with all of the results from that full programme in the league, see what that's done to the league tables. And then next week, because it is County Cup Day, there are quite a few games that are off because teams are playing in the County Cup. And I'm sure we will learn a lot from them winning 23-0 against some sides from Tier 7, Tier 8, and it will all be very much worthwhile. Now that, of course, is a general statement. Some of the counties do their cup pretty well. Some of them really don't. And that's something for the individual counties to have a look at. But yeah, thank you very much for watching this week's live women's football chat. As I said, next week we'll be back recorded, but in the meantime, if you've got any questions or comments, anything like that you want me to discuss on next week's show, then at WFootballChat on Twitter is the place to go. That's where you can get all of the latest news and info as well. Like the tables will come out on Sunday, everything like that. And yeah, so that's where you can go for that. And the DMs are open on there as well. So yep, thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. As I said, next Thursday will be recorded, and then we'll see where we go from there. But at W Football Chat, the place to go for all of the latest. And obviously, if you are watching on YouTube, you don't want to miss a live show when it comes up again, then you can hit subscribe. And then if you hit the bell notification, you'll get told whenever there's a new video out from me. But that'll do it for this week's show. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.